Good morning, everybody. Welcome back. It is Thursday, April 16th, week 3 of distance learning. Today, I'm going to go over a few things. I'm going to read from the textbook on fungus-like protists, and then I'm going to go over the PowerPoint real quick, which will be a really quick kind of repeat of the highlights of the reading. It's just pages 64 to 65, the assignment today. And then it is to go over to Google Classroom right here. Again, all the assignments are up. I know I've talked about this, but some of you may have watched this video that haven't watched earlier videos. So I put all the assignments up just so you have them. And some of you got done with everything by Tuesday. So I'm going to try that again next week. We'll see how well that works. I did get a lot of questions, but if I keep doing this, hopefully the questions will start to thin out and students will figure it out as they ask me and I answer those questions. So again, next week I'll try to have the option to work ahead if possible. Sometimes it's just not possible. And there's sometimes I just want you to work day by day. But so don't get confused. So next week, if I put everything up, don't think I got to get all this done by tomorrow. And of course, there are extensions on these deadlines because of the internet outage in Howard Lake on Tuesday of this week. So just keep that in mind. But after you read page 64 and 65, you can see some people have already turned this in. But I'm recording this video on a Wednesday. But it's Thursday today when you watch this, and this is the assignment. So 64 to 65, really easy, 2 pages. Go into the Google form, click on it, hit submit, go over your questions, hit submit when you're done, and I'll see your score. Then another thing will pop up right here at above 64 and 65. It'll be Ed Puzzle. So it'll be a link to Ed Puzzle I want you to watch. Watch that, and you're going to have to hit turn in. That's where a lot of students forget to do things. So like if I put it as an assignment, you're going to have to submit it either as a Google form or turn in. And I'm learning as we go too, because if you remember from back, and it was probably kind of annoying, even back to last Friday, I put 3 things into one Google form or one announcement. I thought that was being clever, but really it was making it more difficult for you guys to understand things and for me to grade things. So I put all 3 of these things in here, and you'd have to turn in all of them to say turn in. And then that doesn't tell me what score you got. So I have to go in individually to the question. So I'm going to make questions separate. If it's a Flipgrid, I'll make that a separate announcement. If it's an Ed Puzzle, I'll make that a separate announcement. And if it's a daily update video like today, I will make that separate. And that won't be an assignment. That'll be material. So then you can kind of differentiate between material, quiz, and assignment as we go. And it'll help me as well. So there'll be an Ed Puzzle as well to watch about protists again after you read 64 and 65. Sorry, fungus-like protists. And then the video Ed Puzzle, which is going to be about all, just a generalization of the protists, animal, plant, and fungus-like protists we've talked about, okay? Tomorrow is going to be pick a protist and research its characteristics. Some people have already turned that in. I've talked about this on these update videos, but I'll just show it again to you quick. I'll explain it to you. So this will be due Monday, the 20th. Pretty similar to the virus one, except you can't do COVID. I know a lot of people didn't hear me say don't do COVID, and they did anyways. I didn't dock them for that, so don't worry about it if you did that. But this time, it's going to be a little bit more challenging than just to pick the virus that everybody knows about. This is going to be different. It's going to be all about protists. So you're going to pick one protist. Again, you don't have to pick animal-like protists and research all of them. Just pick one. So if you like one of the animal-like protists we talk about, amoeba, paramecium, giardia, pick one of those. If you like the plant-like protists the best, you like the brown algae or the red algae or the dinoflagellates or the diatoms or whatever. Yes. Pick one of those. If you like the fungus-like protists, if you like one of those like the slime molds or the water molds or the downy mildews like today, we're going to talk about, then pick one of those and research it. So the name of the protist, some characteristics about it, guys. And you can read this paragraph, but the characteristic I'm looking for is not, it looks cool and stuff like that. No, I need to know, is it heterotroph or autotroph? Does it get its own food? Does it make its own food? Unicellular or multicellular? Made of one cells or many cells? How does it reproduce? Through spores, through conjugation, through binary fission, and a few other things like that. Give me some interesting facts. So if you do paramecium, say they have cilia, these little hair-like structures on the outside that help them wave food into their mouth, so to speak, and help them move around in their environment. Okay. Infectious diseases. Do they cause infectious diseases? You might have to do extra quick Google research for this, if they do or if they don't. Most of them do. Okay. And then give me a picture. Okay. And that's going to be Friday. It's going to be due Monday. Next week, kind of want to show you real quick what we're going to do next week. Monday, Tuesday next week, I'm going to post this. It's going to be very similar. You're going to have to fill all this stuff in. I want you to just use your textbook. Just use the information you've read or listened to me read in the past week and a half, 2 weeks about microorganisms. So give me the main characteristics of viruses, bacteria, fungus, and protists. You're going to have to go back in your book. This is going to be a 2-day thing, Monday, Tuesday. Like I said, it'll be due Wednesday. Wednesday, we will have our quiz. We'll have our big tester quiz on microorganisms. Obviously, I can't be with you to monitor you, but I'm suggesting, I'm hoping that you use your textbook. I want you to do well on it. I want you to look up the answers and figure them out. I don't want you to, if you want to challenge yourself, please feel free, but I want you to do really well on this. And the test will be very similar. I'm going to ask about characteristics of a certain bacteria, of a protist, of a virus, of a fungus. I'm going to ask about what's the most important roles of fungus in nature. What is the most important information you need to know about viruses? Give me a diagram of one of these things. So this is going to be Monday, and Tuesday's kind of bigger assignment, and then Wednesday will be the test. Thursday, I think we're going to try this fun, I think it's fun, online bacteria type simulation lab. We'll kind of replace a little bit what we were going to do in class, where we are going to brush some surfaces, put it on a petri dish, watch the things grow. This one, we're going to test how different antibiotics affect bacteria. So it's going to be a virtual lab, and I'm going to see how well it works. If it doesn't work, that's fine. We're all learning in this process, but it'll be interesting, and that probably will be a Thursday, Friday thing. And I might do a live Google Hangout at a certain time just to walk you guys through it for some of you that have extra questions, because it will be a little bit more challenging, I think, than what we've been doing. Okay, and then the week after that, so the week of the 27th, I believe, April 27th is a Monday, that will start plants. We're going to do a week or so on plants. We're not going to spend too much time on them. They're very fascinating. And then we'll get into animals, and we'll do animals for like 2 weeks probably. And this is all if we don't go back to school. If we go back to school, things are going to change a little bit. But if we don't go back to school, we'll do plants and animals for a couple weeks, and then I'm probably going to have some type of STEM project related to the zoo. Obviously, we can't visit the zoo. If we go back, we still might not visit the zoo just because of how things are kind of working out. But if we don't go back, I'll do a STEM project in late May, early June about the zoo, and that'll be all virtual online for those of you with access to that. So that's kind of the idea and the things going forward of the rest of the year for Science 7. Okay. PowerPoint and reading. Here we go. So if you're following along, you're on page 64 of your textbook. We are now on to fungus-like protists. Again, protists are not fungus. They are not plants. They are not animals. They are not bacteria. They're not viruses. They're their own separate, unique thing. They're very closely related to fungus, animals, and plants, so to speak. Less related to bacteria. And of course, nothing is technically related to viruses because they're technically not alive. But what we find out, what humans have found out in the last 2 decades or so, is once we sequence the genome, where we found all the DNA sequencing of living things, most, if not all, living things have some type of viral DNA embedded in their DNA. Viruses have a kind of unique way of doing this, and then some of that DNA just kind of stays in there. So you are made up of some virus DNA. Like that's in your DNA, and you pass it on, so. Page 64, what are the characteristics of fungus-like protists? You can think of the fungus-like protists as sort of like organisms. Fungus-like protists are sort of like animals because they're heterotrophs. So heterotrophs are something that, again, you need to go out and get your food, preferably by movement of some sort, but you have to go out and get your food. You can't sit still and use the sun's energy. They are sort of like plants because their cells have cell walls. Okay, remember, animal cells do not have cell walls. It's that extra layer of protection. You have the cell wall on the outside, the cell membrane. You have that double layer. Cell walls protection. Plants have that. Funguses have that. Bacteria have that. Animals do not. So they're like animals in that they can move and they're heterotrophs. They're like plants in that they, have cell walls in their cells. This is fungus-like protists, right? Fungus-like protists are heterotrophs, have cell walls, and use spores to reproduce. Very similar to fungus. Excuse me. A spore is a tiny cell that is able to grow into a new living thing. All fungus-like protists are able to move at some point in their lives. 3 types of fungus-like protists are slime molds, water molds, and downy mildews. Some of my farmers out there, you guys know of these. And if you guys own houses, you potentially in the basement, like not you own houses, but your parents and you live in a house or an apartment building and you get to the basement, sometimes you'll come into contact, hopefully not too close. You don't want to breathe these guys in. But some of you probably have seen or been around these things without even knowing it. Slime molds. Slime molds are often brilliantly colored. They live in moist, shady places like forest floors. They ooze along the surface of decaying materials, feeding on bacteria and other microorganisms. Some slime molds are so small that you need a microscope to see them. Others may span several feet. Slime molds begin their life cycle as tiny amoeba-like individual cells. So they're not amoeba, they're just amoeba-like. Cells use pseudopods to feed and creep around. If food is scarce, so there's not a lot of it, the cells grow bigger or join together to form a giant. You see that a lot in nature, especially with microorganisms, but even the very successful, bigger things like ants, they form these colonies, but bacteria can form a colony too. Fungus can form colonies. These microorganisms are smart, so to speak. They don't have brains, but they know how to survive and how to be effective at that. And a lot of them form these colonies so they're better able to survive. To form giant jelly-like mass. In some species, the giant mass is multicellular. In others, the giant mass is actually one giant cell with many different nuclei. The mass oozes along a single unit. When environmental conditions become harsh, spore-producing structures grow out of the mass, as shown in Figure 8, and release spores. Eventually, spores develop into a new generation of slime molds. One of my favorite things and most fascinating things to me personally about microorganisms, especially like these guys and bacteria, is they can form these spores. I think viruses maybe even too. They can form these spores where they can survive for thousands of years. Some have survived for hundreds of thousands of years, and we've thawed them out in the ice when we've done digging in Antarctica and the North Pole, and we brought some of them back to life because once they get the conditions necessary to live, they pop back to life. So it's really interesting. Water molds and downy mildews. Most water molds and downy mildews live in water or moist places. These organisms often grow as tiny threads that look like fuzz. Water molds and downy mildews attack many food crops, such as potatoes, corns, and grapes. A water mold impacted history when it destroyed the Irish potato crops in 1845 and 1846. The loss of these crops led to a famine. More than 1 million people died in Ireland. Very sad. Page 65, we'll go over do the math, analyzing data, soybean crop loss. Soybean plants can be infected and ruined by a water mold called Phytophthora. I don't know. That's a weird PHTH. That's a weird. Phytophthora sohe. The graph shows crop loss in metric tons in the United States between 2002 and 2005. So take a look at the graph on page 65. You see on the y-axis you have what? Write that down. See if you can. I'll give you a second. Okay, so the y-axis is crop loss in metric tons. So how much crop is lost at the bottom is 0, and it goes all the way up to 1.5 million tons of soybean loss. So then the title would be soybean loss. Obviously, the x-axis is given to you. It's a year, and the years that they measured were 2002, 3, 4, and 5. So in which year were the most soybeans lost? So if you look, barely the orange bar, or the 2004 year, lost a little bit more than the blue or turquoise 2003 bar. So 2004 is where the most soybeans were lost. Described by the soybean crop loss change between 2002 and 2005. Soybean loss increased between 2002 and 2004, but it decreased pretty heavily in 2005. So you see this kind of ebbs and flows up and down. Down to the bottom, assess your understanding. What are 3 types of fungus-like protists? Well, we have slime molds, water molds, and downy mildews. What are the 2 ways the fungus-like and animal-like protists are similar? They both can move and are heterotrophic. A forest loses its trees and the forest floor dries up. How would slime molds be affected? Because there would be no moisture left, they would form and release spores. So they might, form these little spores and wait for conditions, or they could just release them so then they're ready to, to pass on those genes. Okay. I think we're good with that. So just to reiterate with the PowerPoint here, fungus-like protists. The characteristics of plants and animals are heterotrophs, have cell walls, use spores to reproduce. Spore, again, is a tiny cell, is able to grow into a new living thing. For example, the three main fungus-like protists we were learning about: slime molds, water molds, and downy mildews. We went over this already, and that is it. Very short. I'm going to share this PowerPoint to Google Classroom. So especially when you're doing like next week's Monday, Tuesday assignment, we have to get everything from all four microorganisms, characteristics, important information, pictures, all that stuff. Use your textbook, but also use kind of condensed version of that, which is this PowerPoint. Okay, I can't really think. Hopefully you guys checked out the Wuzzle. Oh yeah, here's some email and Google Hangout tips. Miss Meyerson did this video, and a lot of you that watch my videos, I'm assuming this is some stuff you already do, and it's good information regardless. But some of you that have a tough time with some of the schoolwork, watch this video. Basically, I mean, what she's saying is, if you get an email from a teacher, guys, you got to respond. It's just like in class. If I were to call on you, or if I were to ask you a question, if I were to talk to you in the hallway and you just completely ignore me, it's different, obviously, over technology, but it's the same type of gesture. So if I send you an email, just send something back. Hey, I got your email. Thank you. I'll do this. I'll get right on this. Or I have questions. Or can you help me with this? But just don't ignore. Okay. And there's a few other good things in there. So watch that. And let's see. Yeah. So make sure this week you got the last of the fungus one done. On Monday, you got 56 through 60 for animal-like protists. You got 61 through 63 plant-like protists. You got today 64, 65 fungus-like protists. And then you watch the Ed Puzzle video, which I'll put right here. And then tomorrow you have your pick a protist and research its characteristics. All right. Thank you guys for listening. You guys have a wonderful rest of your day. We'll talk to you soon.